Hey there YouTube, welcome back to part 2 of my Black Powder army updates. Now this is the French, and as you can see they're quite a size. Let's start off over here. They haven't got quite as many infantry battalions as the British, but they do outnumber the British by artillery and by cavalry. Now I have mentioned that I'm doing a British cavalry unit next, so that will match up the cavalry units, but I do actually have no... Bye-bye. Oh, there's my cat, by the way, just jumping. She's sort of sleeping in that cupboard at the moment. I was kind of worried that she'd decide to jump onto the table, but I don't think she's going to, luckily. So touch wood. Yes, carry on. Yeah, the main difference between my British and my French, my British always were ahead in infantry, but my French were ahead in cavalry and artillery. Now my British at the moment still outnumber my French by a few battalions of infantry, possibly 3, but my French still outnumber my British by 1 unit of cavalry and 1 unit of artillery, and we'll obviously we'll go into greater detail as we go on. Now my army is based on 3rd Corps, which really wasn't even at Waterloo. In fact, the only part of this corps that was at Waterloo was the 3rd Cavalry Division, which is modelled there, and they're actually 1 regiment down, and I have actually got a box of Perry's Chasseurs de Cheval on order, and that will actually complete that division, because they're quite a small division of literally just 3 regiments, but we'll go into greater detail of those when we get to them. Now, how I chose 3rd Corps is quite an interesting story, because it's kind of an obscure and not really heard about division. They were quite active during the earlier periods, but at Waterloo they actually got split off, and I believe they were fighting the Prussians around the time of the Battle of Waterloo, or chasing the Prussians, or basically not at Waterloo. And the reason I sort of ended up choosing this particular battalion, because when I originally started I didn't really, you know, as a total Napoleonic noob, I mean, I've always been a sort of a military historian. I've always been interested in Napoleonic times, but I've never really sort of delved into historical wargaming to the point of sort of Napoleonics, and the way that they're set up, and the way that you have to sort of model them on the gaming table. And originally I wasn't really even that bothered about following a particular historical division or corps for either my French or my British. And basically how I managed to sort of get into 3rd Corps was that I was basically these 2 units, this unit, where are they? Here. This unit here and this unit here, I believe, are my very first units of French. And I was basically looking for flags for them. And I obviously came across, I sort of asked somebody for advice, and they said, go to GMB Flags. So I did, and I was sort of looking down their list, and I was looking for a light infantry company, and I ended up coming across the 15th, and thought, oh, excellent. And I literally, you know, being a noob, I just thought, yeah, I'll just get that straight away. So I did, and when they came, they were like, 3rd Corps, why can't I find 3rd Corps in the Waterloo order of battle? And then obviously, after doing a little bit of internet searching, I found out that 3rd Corps wasn't even at the Battle of Waterloo, and the only part that was literally a cavalry division. So that's how I ended up sort of getting into 3rd Corps, and then I thought, well, you know, I might as well collect 3rd Corps. You know, why not? A little bit different, and that's basically where I ended up, and the rest is history, because I've basically been following them ever since. So let's get started, and we'll start with the guy who I'm using to represent Vandamme himself, or a general. This is the guy. I believe he is a Perry's colonel, and he's certainly regal enough to be a higher ranked officer. I really like this figure. Obviously, like I said in my my British update, I tend to keep my command figures on smaller bases, and the method I use is that I put my generals on round bases, and I put my brigade commanders on square bases, just to sort of differentiate them. But obviously, there's not a massive amount of room to put extra figures on, but at the same time, the space that I save is probably, I mean, if I put them on a really big vignette base, then you're probably talking about the size of a battalion of infantry, and I'd rather have the infantry on the table than a big command stand, so that's why I tend to go for these smaller bases. But obviously I've said that before, you already know it. So that is Van Damme. Let's go into the next bunch of infantry. Now, the way I've done this army is that I've basically collected one battalion of infantry for every sort of infantry division. So, for instance, it's, you know, in reality, a division is normally 2 full regiments instead of just 2 battalions, and each of these can have between 2 and 4 other battalions, or along with them, you know. And it differs. In fact, so the only one that I've come across that literally had 1 battalion only was the 2nd Swiss. So I'm quite interested in finding out where the second regiment of or the 2nd battalion of Swiss ended up, because apparently there's only one of them in 3rd Corps. But yes, let's carry on. So what I've done, like I say, is 1 battalion per regiment. So that would give you, in this particular circumstance, 2 infantry battalions per brigade, which is quite small. So what I've done is I've abridged them together to make a bigger brigade. Basically, I've taken the commander of the first division. So in this case, we have Baron General Division Pierre Joseph Habert, 10th Infantry Division, and I've put 1st and 2nd Brigades abridged because they're basically abridged together, and that forms my battalion. And as you can see in this particular one, there's actually 5, because one of the second, I think it's the 2nd, they have 3 regiments. What do we got here? So this is actually the 2nd Swiss, 10th Infantry Division, 2nd Infantry Brigade. So the first, let's start from over here. So here we have the 88th. These guys are from the 1st Division, or the 1st Brigade, normally. And we have the 34th. This is one of my earlier units, because you can tell, because I put in my first early units, I put the sapper in the front there. In my later units, I put the sapper back with the grenadiers, and it saves me using a grenadier figure. So here we have, like I say, the 34th, and all the flags, of course, are GMB, like I said. And this is a warlord. Both, in fact, actually thinking about it, this unit here is Perry's. By the looks of it, that could be from my very first Perry's box. And these guys are a warlord. So these guys are probably from the starter set. This actually might be my very first unit of French I did, because I recognise the sapper and the long coat, and I believe that's the only sapper I've got in a long coat, I think. Yes, I believe it is. Oh no, I've got 2. I've got 2 because I've got 2 warlord commands. So yeah, that's those. And then the 2nd brigade is made up out of the 3 battalions. So here we have the 22nd. These guys, I believe, are Perry's, and they're definitely from my first box set. Then we have the 70th, and these guys are fairly recent. And these guys are made up again of Perry's, but they have some frontline command and a Perry's Metal Officer as the junior officer at the back there. And you can see that obviously, because this is a later unit, we have a sapper in the background. Now, not all of my units have got sappers in, but a lot of my later units do have, because I actually found out that you can make sappers out of the Victrix sets by just using some plastic putty to give them an apron and giving them the bare skin heads. So the final battalion of this unit is the 2nd Foreign Line Regiment, or the 2nd Swiss. These guys are Perry's with a mixture of a few Victrix in, and my favourite sergeant figure there, the guy lifting his Shako. Really do like that figure. And for command we have, believe it's all front rank apart from a Perry's officer there, and obviously, yeah, I think that's a Perry's Eagle Bearer there. So we have 3 front rank officers within the command group of the 2nd Swiss. So that is them. Next up, we will move along to my 2nd Infantry battalion, or brigade, sorry. Now, this obviously is the same sort of deal. These are the 1st and 2nd brigades of the 8th Infantry Division, I believe. Yes, 8th Infantry Division. And again, we have the 1st and 2nd brigades, and now these are 2s, but obviously in reality these guys have more battalions per regiment or battalion. So let's start with these guys here. This is the 15th Light. These were one of my I probably did these guys my 3rd French unit perhaps. I had these guys. I got these guys probably a couple of months after I had my starter set, and I actually managed to get the old school box of 36 from eBay, and I was really happy with them, because for paying about £4 more than the normal box it would have cost me, I ended up getting 36 figures, and I was very, very happy about that. They helped stock my mountain, and no doubt in reality some of these, the leftover figures from these, probably ended up in my last battalion that I just completed yesterday. So I was very happy with these guys. Light infantry, obviously, a little bit different from your average bog standard infantry, but obviously with Warlord guys, because I've got long coats on, the only real difference is the blue trousers. But I really do like the light command group. I think they are great figures from Warlord. That sapper is amazing. He's probably my favourite sapper figure, and I believe he is Warlord. I'm not 100% sure. I think he is, but he is a great sapper figure, and he's got like a blunderbuss as well, which is cool. So that is the 15th Light. Then we have the 23rd, which are behind them, and you can see this is, I believe this was my 2nd unit I did, because again we've got a sapper in the front there, and they're all Warlord, including the command. So that is the 23rd, and then we have these 2 units are actually pretty, I think these are the last 2 units I've done actually. So we have the 37th here. These guys are Perry's with Victrix mixed in, I believe. There's some Victrix at the back there, there's some Victrix there. and front rank again, taking up most of the command. I believe all of these guys are front rank apart from the junior officer there. In this particular unit, yeah, I believe so. And for my second unit, these guys are a mixture of Warlord and I think there's one Parries, which is the standard bearer. Other than that, they're all Victrix or Warlord. The commander's Victrix Plastic. Where's the one Parry standard bearer? And there's the rest of the battalion. So that is all of the infantry. So you can see the French have now, with those extra 4 battalions, got a nice little chunk of infantry. Let's next, let's do the brigade commander actually, forgot to do him. So here we have the brigade commander for these guys. Let's have a look at who this guy is. So this is Baron, General Division, Etienne Nicolas Lefol. 8th Infantry Division, 1st and 2nd Brigades Abridged, 3rd Corps. Obviously I've done the same thing as I did in my last, putting the 1st and 2nd Brigades together to make one brigade on the table. And that is practically all of my infantry. Next up we have this last little odd unit. Now this little unit here was made up out of the skirmishers out of my very first Parry's box set. And I decided to make them into a little unit of their own. So you can see they've got an officer, and they've got 6 guys. So I suppose in reality that would be like 2 stands. And they're basically designed to just go off on their own, go into buildings, scout off ahead, and they're basically like a mobile little force that could perhaps just hold up a battalion of infantry, firing a few dice at them. Now obviously in black powder they're pretty useless because they're so small. But in other rules, like for instance, I believe if they're being used in Leon's T66's rules, they could actually become quite effective because they'd have because obviously each base counts as a fire base in his rules. So even though they're slightly smaller bases, they'd still have the stats of a light infantry base, so they can actually pour out quite a little bit of fire, because obviously even though these are single figures, in reality each one could be like 5 or 10 men, so that's the little unattached unit of Voltiers that I suppose could be made up out of a one brigade's Voltiers contingent. But they're kind of like I say, they're not really used for, they're not designed to be used for skirmishers. They're literally designed to be a little unit on their own, and they could be attached to either of my brigades. So that is those guys. Quite a nice little interesting unit. So next up, we're going to squeak the chair along a little bit towards the end of the table, and we're going to go into some cavalry. So as you can see, my French have 2 units of cavalry, as opposed to 1 in my British. Now obviously, as I mentioned yesterday in my last update, my British have got a box of hussars coming into the mix, which would even the odds up. However, my French, this particular cavalry division, which I believe is the 3rd cavalry division, which was actually the only part of 3rd Corps that was actually at Waterloo, they were attached. Now they're quite a small division. Let's just double check. Yeah, 3rd Cavalry Division, 1st and 2nd Brigades. Now these are, like I say, really small. These particular 2 units here are actually a split between the 2 battalions. We have 1st Battalion over here, or 1st Brigade, sorry, which is actually made up out of 2 regiments of Chasseurs de Cheval. So that's what my 3rd box will end up being. And actually, both of these guys are Warlord. This is the set that came in my starter set, and this is a box that I'd bought separately. Now obviously they're both Warlord, so my 3rd box I've actually picked up Parry's for a change, and I'm quite looking forward to doing those. But yeah, so let's go into a little bit more detail about these guys. So let's start off with the very first unit I did. So it's these guys here, and you can see straight away that there's a noob mistake. The fact that the Elite Company is not there. Where if you look at my later unit, I have actually got the Elite Company there. This was a noob mistake by me, not really understanding the the setup of a cavalry unit. Obviously, I kind of understood infantry, but even though it's blatantly the same sort of principles, I kind of messed up and forgot to put the the first company guys in. But not to matter. I did make my own command for these guys. I basically made the officer myself, and I made the standard myself, and I even plastic puttied a resemblance of an eagle. GMB flag, of course. These guys are the 12th Chasseurs de Cheval, and they're actually led by a guy called Colonel de Grouchy. And these guys are in a brigade on their own. They're second brigade, and I believe, like I say, the 12th, are they? 12th, yeah. So these are the 12th Chasseurs de Cheval. And these were my first chasseurs, my first cavalry unit I've actually ever did. And I think they came out quite cool. So here we have, and you can see at the back here we have this unit with a white horse there. He signifies the command squad if they split into two. So it's just an easy way of telling which is the command squad when they split into two units of three. And then going over to the first brigade. Now this is the brigade that's made up out of two sections or two regiments of cavalry. This is, I believe, is it the 4th? Yes, this is the 4th Chasseurs de Cheval, led by Colonel Baron de Michaels. And this is a warlord figure. The metal figure that comes in the box set, and I'll tell you one of the big problems I had with this guy. If you look at the horse, you can see the actual original miniature came with this horrible piece of metal sort of supporting the horse's leg, and I really didn't like the look of it, and there's no way I could sort of meld it into a piece of scenery. So I decided to cut it off, thinking that at least it would have the strength to hold the horse up. If anything, you know, if you were to drop it or something like that, then you kind of deserve for it to sort of bend forward or whatever. But it started bending forward under its own weight, which I thought was quite poor. And after it happening sort of 6 or 7 or 8 times, I saw that the back leg was starting to weaken quite nastily, to the point where if it were to happen many more times, it really wouldn't surprise me if it would just literally snap off. So what I did was, to remedy that, was I basically found the biggest rock that I could find in my sort of Scenics box, and I stuck it down, and I basically super glued the horse's hoof to that rock. So now it is fully stable. I wouldn't like to drop it. You know, there's no saying what would happen if I was silly enough to drop it. But it's good enough to hold the horse's weight up, and it's quite stable. And I was very happy to have averted what could have become, like I say, a nasty snap. And obviously the bugler, who I can't remember if he's metal or not. I think I sort of feel, yeah, I think he's metal as well. So we have a metal bugler and a metal officer, and I believe it's the standard that's just got the metal arm. So that, yeah, so let's just put him back, and I'll show you the rest of the brigade, or the rest of the regiment rather. So we have the standard bearer there, again a GMB flag, and then for the command element we have the chestnut horse on the right side here. Well, even though this unit here has also got a chestnut horse, actually thinking about it, it's the one with the white thing on his nose. there's the command section. There we go. So you can see that's how it's distinguished, because he's got a chestnut horse and he's got a white marker on his head. So that is the cavalry. Pretty chuffed that I've almost completed that particular division. Now artillery. Again, my French were outnumbering my British. My British originally had one battery, and my French had two. Even though it was just basically sitting in the mountain. Eventually, did my British artillery to the point where they've got two batteries, and my French were at three at that particular point, because I'd basically given them the 12-pounders, which of course is the sort of big difference between my British and my French. So we'll start off with this unit over here, because I believe this was my first battalion, or my first battery, sorry. These are 6-pounders, both of them. This one being Victrix. So you can see, if I turn them sideways, so this one's Victrix. It has I have one officer per battery. So you can see that the officer is there. And the second battery is actually a Perry's artillery crew, because obviously in Victrix you get 3 cannons, and I added a metal one to give me another battery, and I decided to get them in long coats for a bit of a change. Really nice model by Perry's. I suppose you could say that you can't really beat metal, but I do think that Victrix cannons are great for their value for money, and also the fact that you get officer figures in them. So I think it makes quite a good combination to have the extra battery made up out of one metal cannon. And obviously in my British force, my extra cannon came with my starter set. Next up we'll go for the second slightly lighter battery, and we have a battery of howitzers. Now my artillery I haven't really sorted out my artillery yet. I mean, in reality, every infantry brigade has got artillery attached. I think at the moment I'm probably going to have the artillery as a separated brigade within its own right. But who knows if that'll change in the future. It may well do. If I was to follow this historical sort of way things go, then I should theoretically have a battery of guns per brigade. So here we have, like I say, the howitzers, and both of these are Victrix. And again, you can see we have the one officer for the battery, because I don't think, my sort of way of thinking of things is that a battery of guns would have one officer and have numerous NCOs, and the officer's really the one that just coordinates them all. So that's my sort of thinking behind that. I think it works out quite well. So yeah, we have that battery of howitzers, and that's, my British don't have howitzers. They have 8-pounders to try and match up with the French 12-pounders. So here we have the French 12-pounders. These were made up out of the box of Victrix artillery that was sent to me by mistake. Now I do actually have somewhere, I should have one spare gun, and I probably will plan to do the same thing and get a metal 12-pounder and make another battery of 12-pounders. But here we go. So here we have the command gun with the officer again, and the second gun over here. Again, Victrix, like I say, and they are great models. There's definitely no doubt about that. But obviously this is the slightly older artillery pack, and not necessarily the Waterloo pack. But actually 12 pounders is actually historically correct for some of my battalions, because they do actually have battery, their artillery, they do actually have an artillery brigade, but they're made up out of two batteries of 12 pounders. So that is actually, well, apart from the brigade commander, I've decided to use this guy, the old Warlord starter set guy, as the artillery brigade officer. I think he kind of looks artillery, even though he's kind of in slightly infantry-ish uniform. He has got the sort of right hat, I think. I think he'll do as a proxy for now. Obviously he's not named or anything, but obviously because he's on foot is the main reason. But I might well have a look to see what various companies offer to use as an artillery brigade officer. But he will do for now. And that brings this view of my French to an end. What are we at? We are at 31 minutes, so slightly longer than my British. I hope you enjoyed it. I, again, like my British, I enjoyed getting all these guys out and having a look at them all together. I think they look really cool. And I suppose when I finish this, I'll have the great job of having to put them all back up on the shelf, which is definitely not one of my favourite things to do. But it's definitely a necessity with my cat around. I daren't leave these things out, because she's just the sort of mischievous little cat that would decide to go waltzing, not around, but through them. And probably she would decide to walk to the end and counterbalance it to the point where it basically tips and the whole army would go onto the floor, which I definitely could not risk doing. So, I hope you enjoyed it. My next video will probably be something to do with the Hussars that I've got for my British. I don't foresee me cracking these guys out quite as fast as I've been cracking out infantry battalions. We all know that my bane is cavalry. It'll probably take me a week to paint the horses and probably a week to paint the guys, so I wouldn't be surprised if it takes me a minimum of a couple of weeks to paint them. But then again, you never know. I have kind of still got the painting bug. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye bye.